Designs for muzmatch, yeah, were done in Microsoft Word.
Oh my God. This interview is over. I have to go. Assalamualaikum, Shahzad.
Walaikum salam.
Guys, I'm so excited. Today I have Shahzad Younas, who is the founder and the CEO of Muzmatch, which is the world's largest faith-based dating app for single Muslims. And if you're single, you've probably been on there. And if you are trying to hook friends up, you probably have suggested they get on there. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited to talk to you today, Shahzad.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, really appreciate you having an interest in us and what we're doing and our mission.
Oh, I'm super excited about it, not only because I believe in the mission and think that with all the kind of cultural taboos we have around marriage for those of us from the Middle East, and just the importance of marriage in our faith and the challenges in building a tech company, kind of the confluence of all those just makes me super excited about this interview and learning more about you and how you built the company.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot to talk about.
Shahzad, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, I don't even know. Actually, that's a good question to start off with. Founder of Muzmatch. I don't know what else to say. Ex-banker, Mancunian, so from Manchester, avid United fan. Love technology, love business. I want to make a difference to the world. There you go.
Okay, I love it. So were you born in the UK?
So yes, born and bred in Manchester in the UK, so home of Manchester United, which obviously everybody loves. The soccer team, as you would say.
Very well-branded city. I'm aware. I'm a UI UX person, a very well-branded city.
I love it. Yeah, we got great design. The Manchester B, that's our symbol. It's a B.
Just omnipresent, truly omnipresent. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a Man U game in my life, but I know they're called Man U for short. I know what a jersey looks like. Very well branded. Ask me who the local soccer team in LA, they're Galaxy. Is that LA or US? I don't even know if Galaxy's LA or US.
Yeah. All thanks to David Beckham.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, okay, so you are born and raised, and then I presume you go to school there. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah. So quite a very simple background, actually. So parents, Pakistani. My dad came, I think, in 1980 or something like that to the UK. I was born in Manchester. My parents actually ended up both being teachers. So secondary school, or I guess you guys call it high school teachers. I worked hard, basically. Went to University of Manchester, did computer science, loved technology, so kind of fell into computing. But then actually realized computing as a career, I absolutely hated, didn't want to do. I actually did an internship at Morgan Stanley, one of the banks, in technology, realized I hated it and realized that is not what I want to do. So literally, I remember just wandering around in the bank, kind of floor to floor to figure out what the hell is this investment bank thing. Came across the trading floor, fell in love with it, thought that's where I want my career to be, and then managed to get into trading at Morgan Stanley, actually, the following year. Did a 9-year career there, really enjoyed it, went through the financial crisis, then kind of questioned what the hell I was doing in my life, and what on earth this contribution that I was making was actually was all for. And then kind of had the idea for Muzmatch. I'll actually back up a little bit. Muzmatch actually started as a kind of just a random side project in 2011. So people don't realize we're actually 10 years old, way back when, as a website. Just because I remember all my friends saying how hard it was to find someone. You know, I'm a Muslim, I totally get it. And I remember looking at what was out there thinking, my God, this is awful. You know, we're still on ugly websites that are asking for like your body shape and how much you earn and eye color and stuff. I thought, this is rubbish. So I remember just designing a website, which I think at the time was pretty revolutionary. So it was a pay-as-you-go website, so you didn't have to pay a subscription, and you would pay 50 pence or 50 cents to see someone's photos, and you would pay $1 or £1 to chat to them. Which I thought at the time, remember this was 2011, that was quite revolutionary. So just ran that, a little side project. I was still working at the bank, just had it kind of ticking along. Did a few singles events, actually, just I don't know why I did it, but I just did it anyway. And then it kind of got to about 2013, 2014, and that's for me was when things got interesting. So 2012, I think I'd really fallen out of love with banking. I realized I did not want to do this. And I actually told myself when I started banking, which was at 21, that I had to do something else by the time I hit 30. And I realized that early on because, I spoke to a lot of people at Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley are quite good in a good way, that a lot of people actually stay there quite a long time. So the bank does a good job of keeping people. It's got a good vibe, etc. So a lot of people were there a long time. But what I realized was a lot of those people who've been there a long time were actually quite fed up in their life, in all honesty. They were there because the money was really good. They built up that lifestyle and they couldn't really go anywhere. And I remember thinking that I do not want that to happen to me. I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. So I remember telling myself by the time I hit 30, I have to do something else. And fully enough, it kind of worked out exactly that way. So yeah, when was it? So about 2013, really, I realized, I don't want to do banking. I need to do something else. Didn't quite know what. And then I remember just looking at I actually remember the first time, I think it was somebody in my team on the trading floor had found Tinder as an app, and we're kind of fascinated by this thing where you could message, basically for them, random girls. And I remember thinking, these apps are going to be big. And Tinder at the time, I think was just starting in terms of, I guess, getting to a half decent size. And I thought, you know what? I think apps are something big. And I remember looking on my website and looking at where most of my traffic was coming, and about half my traffic was coming from mobile. And I thought, this is a no-brainer, right? If you're on a platform trying to find a partner, you're not going to log on, you're not going to turn your laptop on, log on, send them a message, and all that kind of stuff. It's quite a personal thing. You're going to message them on your phone, right? And for me, it was one of those things where in my head I thought, my God, if I don't build an app for the Muslim market, somebody else will. We badly need an app. And it's one of those things. Once it's in your head, I couldn't get it out of my mind. So, get to about 2014. And then I realized, you know what, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to do this thing, this muzmatch thing. And 2014, quit my job, sat at home, literally in my bedroom, and started learning how to build apps. And then, muzmatch was, in 6 months, I don't know how I did it actually. I think I spent about 18-hour days just coding for about 6 months straight. Built the native Android app, the native iOS app, the backend, the graphics, everything, in about 6 months, and launched it. I don't know how the hell I did it. I had no life. And we've come a long way now where the apps, we're approaching 5 million members worldwide. We're a team of over 50 people. We've got members around the world. We've had weddings around the world. Now the team are growing around the world. So yeah, it's been a really for me, it's an exciting journey, and it's genuinely, and it sounds really cheesy to say, but I'm probably more excited now than I've ever been, just because all those ideas that you now have a team where you can actually start building this stuff. So yeah, it's a nice place to be. So that's the executive overview.
So it's funny because as you were telling the story, I was thinking through my own life and the phenomenons in parallel. First of all, in 2013, my brother never kind of followed through with it, but him and a friend founded Hipster Shoddy, which was Ishker.
I remember this. Yeah, I used to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very young at the time. They just never kind of carried it on. But I remember at that time too, we had the Mipsters video. It went viral. People were super interested in kind of young, especially in America, the young American Muslims who were, breaking, really kind of owning the third culture space. But I also distinctly remember at that time, A, if you were Muslim, you'd have to go through non-Muslim apps and maybe look for a filter. But B, most of my friends lied about it. Like a lot of my friends on apps at that point, it was still taboo, and they straight lied about it. And in fact, some of them are still carrying the lie, who've been married for a decade now, and they're just in too deep. But this is just to say that it really was, now it just seems so basic. And I tell all my friends who are single, get on an app. But at the time, it really was something.
Yeah, you're dead right. And you know what's weird, and I always found this really strange, that for a Muslim, right, if I'm a guy, right? How am I going to meet a girl? You're not going to go to a club and all that kind of stuff, because we don't do that. Right? It's not our culture. And you just think, all right, well, how on earth are you going to meet a girl, right? And you realize those social interactions between the genders for Muslims are actually really limited. It's either work, or it's some family sort of function, or it's friends, and then that's kind of it. So for me, what I always found really strange was that online seemed to make the most sense for Muslims.
Right.
So it always baffled me. We're behind because of the taboo, you're right. But it always baffled me. It shouldn't be the case. For us, we should be totally embracing this, because, if your head's in the right place, it's probably the most halal way you can meet a guy or a girl, right? To do it online. So I always find that, even now I find it baffling, but, we are where we are.
Yeah, you're totally right. And so it's 2014. You realize you're a full stack developer after 10 years of not developing anything, and a designer at that. And you build this. And did you raise money?
No, so it was interesting. It's funny you said designer. I remember I was showing some of my team. The first designs for muzmatch, the app, were done in Microsoft Word.
Oh my God. This interview is over. I have to go.
So I still got the documents where I was designing it in Microsoft Word, and it was crazy. And then I think the second version, which I designed a year later, sorry, in 2016, was nearly almost in Microsoft Paint. So it was really basic.
I thought they sunsetted that in like 1998. You know what's really funny? I tell so.
I still know in Windows, MS Paint always gets it up.
Oh my gosh, you know what's so funny? So I've been working in Photoshop for like maybe 20 years now, in Illustrator and everything. So in architecture school, I went to architecture school, and there was a joke that went around about me about how I can write an essay faster in Photoshop or Illustrator versus Microsoft Word.
It's a great skill, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So we have inverse skills. Okay. So you develop, by the time that you're done, I guess I have two questions. Did you raise money? Did you have a team? And the third question is then what? Like, how did you get it out there? So that's a whole mouthful of an answer, but I would love to hear the answers to those things.
Yeah. It's a good question. So let's hit the first one. So it was actually me for a long time. So, technically the website, like I said, it was 2011. I quit my job and started building muzmatch October 2014 from memory. And then it was April 2016 where I made my first hire. So I'd already built the app on Android, on iOS. It was already live. It was already out there. I think by the time, 2016, we had about 50,000 members. And I'll tell you how we got to that stage. And I remember back then, I built the Apple app in Objective-C, which was, now an old horrible language, but that was a language for Apple. And at the time, Swift was the newer language, but A, I didn't know it, and B, I knew that it was such a new language that there wasn't enough on the internet to actually give you support for it. Anyway, fast forward to like April 2016, and obviously I'd already redesigned what I thought muzmatch 2.0 was going to look like. So I'd kind of built it all in Android, and then I needed to build it in iOS for Apple. And I wanted to do that in Swift. And I actually realized, this is the perfect time to actually make my first hire. So I started looking for an Apple developer to help me build it. And that's when I made my first hire in April 2016. We went on a journey of 3 years of getting into Y Combinator and going from there. So there's more to say there. In terms of your second question, which was how do we market it and all that kind of stuff? Well, it's old school, right? So when I built the app, I literally, every single social that that was going on in London, I was in London at the time, so I'm still in London, but all the socials that would go on, which were basically undercover singles events, really, right? All these Muslim socials, professional network, and all, it's all basically singles who turn up.
Always. I stand by it.
Some things are global for the Muslim community, I'll tell you that.
It turns out.
So I literally would go to, I remember actually, it was, I printed off, so I designed in Photoshop, actually. I learned how to use Photoshop by then. So I designed a business card for muzmatch, which basically just said what the app was, and on the back of it, it had the features of it. And I made a business card because then you could put it in your purse, your wallet. You wouldn't throw it away, right? Because it's not like a big pamphlet or leaflet. And anyway, I went to all these events, and I literally used to hand cards around to everyone I could find. And I remember, especially meeting girls at these events, I used to give them the card, and they would pretend that they don't want anything to do with it. They're like, "Oh, that's so weird, and I'm not going to be on an app," and all that kind of stuff. But they would keep the card, And it's funny because even years later, I might meet some random people that I met years ago, and they'll literally, I remember one girl, she opened her purse and she said, "I've still got that card you gave me 5 years ago," or whatever, which is crazy. So I used to do all that. I remember, especially when girls would be like, "Oh, you have to do all this kind of stuff," but they were like, "I'm never going to be on that, go away." They found me weird, right? And I used to just quietly drop a card in their purse when they weren't looking, that kind of stuff. So, I had all those tactics. I would go to the big mosques, and as soon as it's Jummah, I would literally pray quickly, run out, and then start handing cards out at the entrance and the exit. I used to go to very Asian or Muslim areas, and I used to put the cards in windscreens and all that kind of stuff. Literally everything I could, I would do. I'd go to if I knew a marriage event was happening somewhere, I used to just hustle outside, near the exit, and hand my cards out. So it was really kind of a one-man army of just trying to get this thing out there. I have to admit, there was somebody I know who used to run marriage events as well. I don't think he does it anymore, but he was actually quite nice in that he was like, "You know what? I don't care how people meet their partner. They just need to meet someone. So if you want to hand your cards out at my event, that's totally cool." So that was nice of him, actually, to do that, because not everybody was like that. And yeah, it literally just grew from that. I have to admit, I didn't spend anything. Even those business cards, I ended up getting. I think I ordered 50,000 or it might have been 80,000 or something crazy. And I think I only got through about half of that box, to be honest. Which I think the other half is still in my garage. But it's quite funny because it didn't cost me anything anyway because there was a printing error on it that they made, and I complained and they said, "Oh, it just happened for free." So that marketing literally cost me nothing for about 2 years, but it worked. It got the brand out there. People heard about it, and I actually think I was lucky in that at the time. Like I bust a gut for 6 months to make sure we were the first app out there, like pure app, right? Because there weren't any for Muslims. I wanted us to be the first. And, at the time, and I think what helped, I guess, muzmatch grow was A, there was a clear need, and B, there wasn't any competition. There was no other app that you could point to. This was something really new. Everyone was used to horrible websites that cost you an arm and a leg. So when an app that's totally free comes out, that'll help you get married, I think people were willing to give it a go. So they got through all the pain of the app and the bugs and all that kind of stuff. We used to have this thing where I still remember. So every day you would get, your swipes, right? How many profiles you were going to get. And, when you're starting from zero, and we started from 0 members, you would get like 1 swipe a day. Then it was 2, then it was 3, then it was 5, then it was 10. And then it grew to about 50, I think, that you would get per day. And what was interesting was at midnight UK time was when you would get your new set of swipes, only because the database was literally just saying, give me the date right now. So as soon as it hit midnight was when your next batch would come. And it was so crazy because literally as soon as it hit midnight, the server would crash because everybody would go on the app and get their new swipes. So it was kind of the worst thing. So it took me about a year to rebuild some of that logic to be tailored a bit more from, the moment that you run out of swipes and spread it out. But yeah, that was just an interesting bug. So I think people were willing to put up with, call it all of that, because there wasn't anything else out there. There was no comparable. So they were like, A, this is free, so it's not going to cost them anything. So why not? Let's give it a go. And, for me, I worked on it, relentlessly. I was, I remember I was a one-man army here. So I was doing literally everything, including customer support. And even I think it was about 2 or 3 years into 3 years into doing it, I was still doing customer support, and that was taking me 3-4 hours a day just doing that. Which is crazy, but and this was like approving profiles, replying back to customers with problems, fixing issues, dealing with reports and all that kind of stuff, blocking accounts where I needed to, all that kind of stuff. And, it was, that's a huge job in its own right now. Now that's a team of, we've got a team of 15 ladies who take care of just that. That's how much we've grown. But back then I insisted on doing it quite a long time because for me, it was the perfect way to literally hear feedback from customers direct. So I'd literally go through all the pains that they were finding, listen to their feedback, etc. So I remember taking all of that, and when I designed, muzmatch 2.0, which we released in August 2016, I kind of based that on about 5,000-6,000 bits of feedback that I'd got from customers in the prior 2 years or year and a half. So I used all of that to design what I thought was or should be the product. And if I look at the app now, it kind of more resembles muzmatch 2.0 from 2016 than it does the very first version.
Right. And what's great about it is the name is quite clever, and the name says exactly what it is, which I think is important, and also in itself is a marketing technique.
Yeah, the name is because it's great because exactly that. As soon as you hear the name, you know exactly what it's about. And
you're like, oh.
It's kind of funny because the name itself came about a little bit of a joke, in all honesty. Back in my banking days, my team were mostly non-Muslim. Actually, they were mostly non-Muslim. And there was only one other Muslim who joined later on. And they were, I was amazed at how unfamiliar they were with Muslim culture in general. So anyway, they used to just take the mick out of me all day long of, Shaz is single and he's never going to meet a girl, and Muslims can't, guys can't meet girls, and, no sex before marriage and all that kind of stuff. They found it hilarious. And I think one day we were just cracking jokes about how different faiths would what apps different faiths would use to find a partner. And so we had like I do Hindu, Sikh for Sikh people, I Jew for Jewish people, and muzmatch was the funny one we came up for Muslims. And I remember, like, for me at the time, I was like, I really like this name, it's really catchy. I couldn't get the name out of my head, so I bought the domain, and then when I set up that first website, it just seemed obvious. Just call it muzmatch, right? That's what it'll be, and it's kind of just grown since then, in all honesty. And what's great now is I think muzmatch is almost used in a good way for us. It's almost used as the default name for an app for Muslims. We're like the Google when it comes to using an app, for Muslims to find a partner. So for us, amazing.
I love to hear it. And I saw that there was 42,000 reviews only on your Android store, which is incredible. And just like also a true testament to the users liking it and the user experience. So you were onto something in 2016 when you were using Paint to design your user interface.
Little do they know.
Little do they know, little do they know. So it's 2016, you have your iOS, and I know you went to YC in 2017. Kind of what happened in between? Were you just like, I need money, I need to figure this out? Like what was that journey like?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, no, exactly that. So, I was looking to grow, right? It was still, my, I'd literally saved up to quit my job. I remember in the last, it's kind of funny. I had a friend, in my banking days who we were on the trading floor together. And especially in the last few years before I left, we used to always get breakfast together. We used to wander up to the canteen. And every day we'd literally say to ourselves, each other pretty much in the lift. I still remember we used to be like, what are we doing? We need to do something else with our lives. This is so boring. We were fed up. Both of us were fed up with finance and banking, And like I said, especially after the financial crisis, for me, I really questioned what on earth I was doing. I questioned what banks were doing. It's one of those things where you have to live with it and you're just like, I'm not quite comfortable with all this. And, you realize the heart, it's kind of one of those weird things. It's not a surprise, but the heart of banking is purely money driven. Everything else is so secondary, and that doesn't totally sit well with me. So anyway, we both kind of really wanted to quit and really wanted to kind of get out of all of this. And in the end, we kind of both did. He started his own business and I started mine, right? So really great there. But anyway, in those last few years of banking, I was very sensible and I saved up to quit. So, I bought a place, I made sure I didn't have any debts. I was really quite sensible. I mean, I still am in all honesty in terms of, I guess, how I live my life on that perspective. But I was very sensible when all that came because I knew if I wanted to start a business, I needed capital to do it, to take this risk. And if it didn't work out, I needed money to kind of sustain myself before I find another job, right? So, but I knew I had to quit my job to do it. So anyway, 2 years in, I made my first hire. All the costs of running muzmatch, the server and all that kind of stuff was coming out of my pocket. And when I made the first hire, same thing. I was paying his salary as well out of my pocket. And then it got to about, so it was kind of like that's what I say, with muzmatch and with starting a business, so many things are kind of really nice coincidences. So there's an organization in the States called the American Muslim Consumer Consortium, AMCC, and it's just an organization set up by some Muslims who I guess just try and really shout about, I call it the Muslim dollar or the scope for Muslim businesses and provide some sort of support network. Anyway, they reached out. Or I can't remember. They were holding some sort of like business pitching thing in New Jersey, and I heard about it. I applied for it, and they said, "Yeah, we'd like you to come out and pitch." So I flew out to New Jersey and pitched muzmatch to the crowd there. They really liked it, and I remember there were four judges. And afterwards, one of the judges, I was just having a chat with him, and he, really nice guy, and he actually had a company that was bought by Airbnb. And he was talking to me, and he was like, you know what, you should apply to Y Combinator. And I didn't know what Y Combinator was. I had no idea. At the time I was trying to raise investment in the UK. And trust me, in the UK, most investors here are pretty stingy when it comes to valuation, and even stingier or even more scared of risk than most investors here. And, if you say Muslim and dating, that's two categories they really don't want to touch. So I realized I'm never going to raise anything in the UK. So I stopped wasting my time. Literally, I didn't bother. And he was like, you need to apply to Y Combinator in the States. It'll help your footprint here, give you some credibility. So I applied to YC. And thankfully, they really liked the idea. They liked our early traction and they called us out. So remember, it's quite hard to get into YC. It's like, I think it's for each batch, they do 2 batches a year. Well, they did back then. I don't know what they do now, but 2 batches a year. I think about 13,000 companies apply. About 800 are actually called out for interview, and they'll fly you out to San Francisco, kind of cover all your expenses and all that stuff. And then out of the 800, only about 100 actually are selected. So thankfully, this was, I think, summer 2016, we were selected. We got called out to San Francisco, so flew out there, did the interview, and it's literally, imagine this, they've flown you out for literally a 10-minute interview, and it's timed. As soon as 10 minutes are up, bye-bye. And then they do this thing where by the end of the day, they'll call you if you get it, and they'll send you an email if you don't get it. And the very first time we applied and did the interview and all that, we got the email. And basically they said, look, we really like you, like your story, like you were the founder, but we just need to see revenue in this category. So I was like, great. So literally came back to the UK and thought, all right, let's start making revenue. And we created like our very first product, which was we call it instant chat. We created it in the app where you can chat to someone. You can pay like the price of a cup of coffee, and you can directly talk to someone if you're really interested in them. And we released it, and I still remember we just updated the app. We didn't really send any messages to customers or anything like that. Even I don't think the app review note said anything. And we just wanted to see if people would spot it, and they did. Literally within about an hour, we made our first sale. We had a little kind of ringing bell that would go off when we made a sale. And then I think we made like $200 in the first day. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then we just kind of grew from there to the point where we had to turn that sound effect off because it was annoying, which is always a good point to be. And then we literally applied to YC in the following batch. So we kind of ticked that box of what they wanted, and they called us out to interview again. Again, 10-minute interview. I remember in the first interview, we were kind of lucky. One of the interviewees was Paul Buckheit, who's the creator of Gmail. So, and I remember I think I was on the second time. So when we went there, we had different people interviewing us, 10-minute interview. But thankfully, I think we nailed the interview. Really, really polished, really confident. I guess we'd gotten better about talking about our story as well. But equally, we had good data to back it up. We had revenue, we had really nice charts. So yeah, we got in. And we did summer 17 was when we did YC, and then we did demo day, so where we pitched to a whole bunch of investors, and then we did our seed round afterwards, which actually took about 4 months, but we raised a bunch of money in the US and then a bunch of money in the UK through the US connections, and our seed was about $1.75 million. But even then, I have to admit, so we'd done that, but we actually were still quite slow in hiring. I think we only hired by that time about 5-6 people for quite a while. So we were a small team for a long time. And I think by then we had 250,000 members, and the revenue had grown a little bit, etc. So things were going well, but the team was actually quite small. And for us, I guess our growth has just accelerated, and as a team size, just in lockdown and COVID, I think we've hired about 20 people in the company. So we've really kind of, I guess we've grown. And not only that, just between teams and trying to figure out the kind of people that work, the kind of people that don't, and I guess what we need as a business, that's a whole learning process as well. And, we've been on a long journey with hires that have worked, hires that haven't worked, so I'm never too afraid to realize when things aren't the way they should be. And then just kind of, sometimes you just have to wake it up and start again. And, sometimes that's just what it takes. So I think thankfully now what's really good is I think our teams are formed so much better. I think we've really figured out what we need as a business, and how to kind of build a team, because we built teams from nothing as well. And I'm keen for us not to be too corporate for as long as possible. So we'll see how long that lasts. But I think now we're in a much better place as a business. We kind of know what we're doing, and we know kind of the levers we need to pull, and I guess the homework we need to do before we do it.
And I'd imagine that COVID helped your business quite a bit. What did you learn about your business in COVID, and kind of what was that experience like?
Yeah. So number one, remote working works. It's funny, I was listening to a talk about remote working. So I was always a little bit old school in that if you're building a company, you need a core of people who know and trust each other. So, to build that, you need it to be in person. And equally, as much as I liked the idea of remote, the problem is I was listening to the talk, and it's totally correct. It needed a network effect to work. So, when everybody wasn't doing it, if anyone was remote, they were always the odd one out. They were the outlier. They would probably worry that they're the outlier. And then also there was always a juggling act of, all right, well, let's say there's a meeting, or how do I include them in the conversation? And the whole thing becomes messy. Whereas now, everyone's on a level playing field. So, we were all, I still remember the day where, there was word, I think it was in March 17th in the UK, when there was word that the Prime Minister was going to basically say that, everyone's instructed to work from home if you could. So I knew that was coming, and I spent that day writing a document of how I thought we should work going forward. And, this is like a step change, from X years you're in an office, and then the next day, the whole business is going to be working from home. So, and actually, if I look at that document, we would kind of mostly hit it right in terms of having stand-ups, daily stand-ups, the way we would kind of touch in with each other in terms of what we're doing, communication, how we'd organize our day, etc. And for the most part, I think we actually nailed it fairly well early on. Maybe the one thing was slightly too many meetings or calls, which I think is actually a juggling act most companies are still facing. But as a business, it worked, and everyone's been on a journey, Initially, the novelty of working from home was great. Then it was the fatigue of being sick of working from home, not seeing anyone, of lockdown, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's fed up. And then it was wanting to see people again. But then it's finding a good balancing act of good home life, good work life with people. So, we're now at that last phase of figuring out what does the business look like going forward in terms of teams, in terms of how we work. So that's the team side of things, and I think we've done well. We've been more productive than ever. We've built stuff faster than ever. It's still been stressful, don't get me wrong, and I think the team have definitely felt the stress, but in a good way. The business has been busier than ever. We've hit almost record month after record month on almost every metric, which is good. We've still got I think big areas of the app to work on that we are working on, but it's kind of good that we've had that kind of progress. For us, COVID has definitely sped up the killing of the taboo around being on an app. I had friends who previously they would know me personally and they'd be like, Shaz, I love what you're doing, but I'd never be on an app like yours. It's just not my thing. Who, towards the tail end of the pandemic, are messaging me saying, all right, Shaz, what's this muzmatch thing? And can you hook me up with free gold? So it's kind of interesting. People have come out of the woodwork to finally give it a go, which I think for me just demonstrates now I think that taboo is really kind of sped up. The eradication of that taboo is still there, but and we're a bit behind the mainstream, but I think it's definitely going. There's more and more people just embrace it, especially young Muslims, I have to admit. So for us, we're one of the fortunate businesses to have done well, from, I guess, the change in the world and what's happening. For us now, it's how do we navigate that afterwards? And I guess for us, even in terms of product, which is really good, I still remember we had a roadmap. We had so many things we were working on. Then lockdown started and we were all at home. And I remember saying, "All right, guys, the roadmap we're whipping up. The very first thing we're doing now is video calling, voice calling, and rich chat. Sharing images and all that kind of stuff. Just making chat really good. So we blitzed it. We designed calling in about, we designed and built it in about 1.5 months, something like that. It was 2 months, let's say, which was crazy. And now we do what? We do about over 5 years worth of calls every month. It blows our mind just how busy that is, which is really good. And even better, think about nearly half of calls are started by women, which is great. So, for us, I think COVID just definitely accelerated aspects of the product, just gave us kind of, in a way, I wouldn't say a new lease of life, because we've always been a very ambitious company, and I think we've always pushed ourselves. We know the bar is the mainstream, call it Western apps. That's the bar in terms of quality and size. That's where we need to get to, so that's the target. But I think for us, it definitely presented nice opportunities, and for us just to really make sure that the gap between us as a platform and everyone else is just huge. And I think it is, but you can't sit on your hands. You've got to carry on.
Yeah, that a lot of that really resonates, and it seems like you raised some more money after YC. From the 1.75 you went up to 9. Was that during COVID?
That was just before, actually. So and this, our Series A story was so odd in a good way. We did the Series A, and I didn't even design a pitch deck for it. I literally didn't. I didn't even pitch it barely. I was thinking about it. My co-founder at the time, who joined, who was originally joined as an Apple engineer. He wanted to. We said to each other, we'll give this 3 years and we'll go from there. And he wanted to kind of start his own thing, which is great. So, and I was like, and it was ready to kind of raise some more money and let's grow this business. So it's kind of interesting that for us it was finding an investor who wanted to buy I guess his equity and also invest in the business. So it got to about, I think it was January-ish 2019, and I remember there was an investor who just reached out to me about a year before that, who was just interested in what I was doing, liked the story, and he just said, I had a few investors kind of reaching out, but he just stayed in touch, and now and then he just sent me an article that I found interesting, or some little factoid about something. So we just kind of very loosely kept up this chat, and I don't think I'd ever met him from memory before then. And then literally out of the blue, he said, you know what? He said, Chaz, I'm in London. I'd love to meet. And I said, great, actually, this could be perfect timing. I've got something I want to talk to you about. So he came. And I said to him, look, I'm thinking of doing a raise, but maybe it was the banker in me. I said, look, the raise needs to look like this. I knew how much I wanted to raise. I knew the valuation, and I kind of knew the terms that I wanted to do it. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I didn't want this kind of complicated raise where, like people have Series A, which is quite complicated on so many ways. And, VCs and investors wanting, liquidity preferences and God knows what. And I said, all of that you can throw out the window. This is going to be super simple if we do it. And literally over coffee, I told him what it was about. I told him the stats, and he said, you know what? Give me a day or two. Just send me a few data points, and then I'll come back to you. So I sent him a bit of data that he asked for, and then literally he was like, you know what, Shaz, I'm in. And we'll do the round. I was like, great. So literally in our Series A, it was just them, which was Luxor, a US-based hedge fund, and Y Combinator as the two investors. So super simple round, and like I said, it was relatively straightforward. What was interesting in all of that, I remember, we kind of, when I was doing the Series A, we were on a trajectory in terms of revenue and size and stuff. And kind of just at crunch moment, Ramadan hits, right? It's Ramadan time. And that's a period when our app goes quite quiet. We have fewer users, revenue drops, etc. And for him, he was like, "What the hell's going on? The metrics going backwards." And we were, it wasn't great as a graph. Let's just say that. And I was like, "Look, now relax. It's Ramadan. It's totally normal. It'll bounce back." Obviously, I'm stressing because right now it looks like the round is falling apart because of this. And then I just said to him, "Look, I guarantee after Ramadan this will be back." And we were working furiously on so many different things to make sure that when Ramadan was over, we were kind of back with a bang. And thankfully, we more than exceeded, kind of the goals that I'd set for our Series A. So it kind of reassured him that, basically when we put our mind to it, we can achieve what we set out to, which I guess for investors is kind of what they want to see. So thankfully, yeah, we did that, and then we, that was July 2019 was when we closed that round. And then we started making a few hires, and then literally it was, March 20. Actually, when was it? It was March 2020 when, lockdown started, and then, it was pandemic time.
What's really fascinating too is you kind of tell this story and talk about your growth. I'm curious to know how you measure your own metrics because retention is not your goal, right? When people get on your app, you want them off ideally, though they pay you monthly. And so I'm curious to know, how do you measure the success of your business? Yeah, and I would love to know about just your metrics.
No, of course. So I'm not going to share exact numbers with you, but I'll show you kind of what I look at. So, and you're dead right. I recently, it's kind of weird. Whenever somebody joins muzmatch, when we hire someone, I onboard them, right? So I do two things with every hire. I always do either the first or an early interview because I know what we want and what we don't want in a person. And then secondly, when they onboard, I always onboard them personally. I'll run through, call it the company, the mission, what we're trying to do, my expectations of them and of the team, etc. Like I said, we've got high expectations, and thankfully we have a very smart, driven team. The work ethic is really good. It's just a very solid team, which I'm extremely grateful for. But even that hasn't arrived out of accident, right? There's a lot of work of figuring out basically how to hire. Even myself getting a good process on that. Anyway, so as part of all that, we only recently I thought I should actually write down this stuff that I'm onboarding them with rather than just saying it every time and probably missing something here and there. So I wrote a set of kind of core principles that I want us to live by as a company, and one of them is our underlying mission is we want our customers to leave muzmatch. We want them to get married. The best outcome ever, like literally, because that's how we've grown, right? We've grown because somebody gets married and somebody at the wedding finds out, and then the whole wedding knows that really they met on muzmatch, or they say, well, look, whether they're willing to shout about it or not, but they'll tell their friends, you know what, this muzmatch thing, it worked for me. You should check it out. And we've grown by word of mouth, and we still, our biggest source of signups is organic. It's people finding us somehow, which for us is great. So I'm a firm believer that, look, if you focus on solving the problem, everything else will come, right? Your users will come, your user base will grow, revenues just naturally come, etc. So for us, that's always our first principle is help them get married, literally, make sure that we solve that problem for them. Second thing is always, by the same token, you should always be able to use muzmatch, never pay us a penny, find a partner, chat to them, get married and leave. And, that should always be free. I never ever want that to be paywalled. So that's, call it my personal mission to make sure that the product always remains free in its core of finding a partner and chatting to them and leaving. So that's important. And that cements the first point, which is we want you to get married, In terms of metrics and then how I look at it, whole bunch of stuff. We look at how many active users, how many people open the app that day, unique people that day, that week, that month, how many messages were sent, how many matches were made, how many swipes were done, how many people actually left telling us they met their partner on muzmatch and haven't come back. And right now, I think we're averaging about 300 people a day, which is crazy,
Wow.
who leave muzmatch and tell us, thank you, I met my partner, I don't need you anymore, which for me is mind-blowing. And properly amazing stories of people around the world finding someone, flying across the world. We've had people's kids signing their single parent up, and finding them someone, and their parents of these two families getting married and stuff like that. It's crazy, some of the stories we've had, and it's genuinely touching. I've got muzmatch couples on my Facebook feed, and they're kind of posting photos of their life as they grow up. They have kids and all of that, and it is amazing. That it all started from this thing that we've built, which I feel really genuinely lucky to be part of.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I'm curious to know, remember when, one of the, like, matching websites in the United States released, like, a report on things they learned about love and data? I can't remember it for the life of me, but it was a breakthrough report. You know which one I'm talking about? It was, like, the mid-2015s. So, my question to you is, what are the high-level insights you found about our community? Like, do women tend to reach out more than we make it seem? Like, on average, how many people does somebody speak to? Like, for somebody who's listening and feels like love is a black box and they don't wanna go online, I'm very data driven. So how do we convince them through data that everybody's doing it and it's okay?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Actually, and I'll back up one thing you asked on the previous question that I forgot to give you an answer for on insights and how I look at it. One thing that, and I'm glad we did it. We did early on. We actually built it's just an email, and we call it Insights, and it's run every day, every week, every month of all of our metrics. So all those things that I said, I'll get an email first thing in the morning, and it's literally the first thing I'll read almost every day for the last 6 years, which is all the stats of our business, what happened yesterday, and how that compares to a week ago. So a true week on week for all those metrics. For us and for me, that's probably been the most single useful thing that we've done in terms of keeping an eye on our growth, and just being on top of it. So I look at that. It helps me spot when things are not going so great. If we've got a problem somewhere, even if you've got a bug, sometimes you get a bug that has weird consequences. And recently we had something where we had a dip in certain metrics, and it's kind of one of those things. I felt something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was, and it bugged me for literally 2 weeks, and it was getting worse. And no one could figure it out, and then kind of I had a hunch of what it might be, and then it's kind of strange how things pan out. We were looking at another bug, and then it showed, and then it clicked what this other bug was, which was the reason why we were having this dip in this metric. And just if I wasn't on top of it like that, probably would never have known, and you kind of end up in dangerous territory. So probably the most important thing for us is always having something that you literally check every day, and you have an idea of, is this good or bad? What's the progress? It's interesting. Airbnb did something similar-ish in the early days. So they set themselves a target. I don't know what imagine the target was 1,000 rentals or whatever. And in the house that the apartment they were staying at, they literally put post-it notes everywhere of their target. So for them, it was like, there's no escape, I'm going to check myself against this and see where we're at, which they found really useful. So I guess it's a similar kind of thing, but yeah, that was just one thing on insights. Oh, your second question, yeah, in terms of the data. So the data is really interesting. So, imagine it, right? So we've got nearly 5 million members. It always surprises me it doesn't surprise me, but it surprises everyone else when I say 2/3 of our members are male and 1/3 are female, because, I think, I guess colloquially and for us, anecdotally, sorry, in our lives, I generally hear both in the UK and the US that there are more single Muslim females, right? That's a much bigger problem. There's this big disparity. So it kind of baffles me that there's more men on the app, number one. Number two, in terms of, if you look at some of the stats, so, we're sending literally millions, people are sending millions of messages per day. Like I said, in terms of things like calling, over half of calls are started by women. Even when it comes to sending photos and stuff, I think when I last checked, it's like 45% of photos are actually sent by women, right? So it's not by men sending photos and all that kind of stuff. So what's good is it's not so skewed in terms of all of that side of things, of who's initiating the conversation, etc. And it's funny because early on, I think this was 2016, we actually built, women goes first in muzmatch, right, as a thing. And it went down like a lead balloon. Muslim women were not interested in going first at all. And it took me about a week or 2 weeks. And I was like, right, we're going to undo this feature. That was a disaster. I thought it would have been a great idea. Clearly wasn't. I guess the Muslim market or the Muslim female market just weren't ready for all of that. They expected the man to make the move. So that was interesting. We've done some stats on, for people who find success, what's their story. And, on average, from registering to finding a partner and leaving, on average, it only takes about 6 to 7 months, which isn't actually that long to find, hopefully your life partner, right? So, that's a good window. But saying that, there are members on Muzmatch who've been here since day one, right? So that's like 6 years ago on the app, which is crazy, right? And then flip side, we have people who join, and I remember this one guy who, this is quite a funny story actually. So he met his partner on Muzmatch, and then he messaged me like call it a year later, and he said, "Oh, can you send me the original chat I had with what is now my wife, right, on Muzmatch?" So I was like, "Yeah, fine, give me the details," and he gave me the details. Then I started digging around, And then I was like, I said, I found your account, but I said, there's only like one girl on it. And this was the only chat I could find. And, this chat was only like a couple of hours after you registered. And then he replied back going, yeah, that was it. I basically signed up and it was only 3 hours and I matched with her. And that was the girl I ended up marrying. And I was literally like, are you having a laugh? Like, you signed up and 3 hours later, that was the only, and sorry, just to top that, that was the only girl he liked. So he didn't even like any other girl. That was literally like the first girl he came across, liked her, matched, chatted to her, left the app, got married, job done. And I was like the ultimate, like he's optimized ultimately. So yes, it's crazy kind of some of those stories that we've had, but I think otherwise it's quite variable. I think with one of those things, and I always say to people, especially people who've been looking at it for a long time, A, don't beat yourself up about it, but B, not that you should treat it as a job, but look, very rarely will your partner just fall into your lap. It takes work. It takes work of getting out there, putting yourself out there, talking to people. When the panic's over, meeting people is important. We've had people who've just gone on that journey and just said, actually, I learned a lot about myself just by meeting people and I actually figured out what it is that I actually do want in my life. What kind of partner do I actually want? I thought I had an idea, but then I met a bunch of people and realized actually I was wrong. That is not that's not the right partner for me. So people have been on that kind of journey, which I think is really good. And I think for Muslims especially, that needs to happen more. If we look at it, probably the biggest complaint I always have, and I've heard 1,000 times, and I kind of don't blame them, is mainly from women saying, "Oh, men are useless. They don't know how to talk. Blah 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 blah." It's very skewed. Don't get me wrong. I hear the same from men about Muslim women, right? So there is this thing where I think socially we're not up to scratch, in terms of having those, even just that chivalry, those manners, or just that ability to have these kind of conversations, etc. And I think sometimes we give ourselves a bit of a hard time, only because for Muslims we're not, from a younger age generally we're told not to talk for guys, not to talk to girls, etc. Those interactions are always limited. And then, we're thrown in this position where it is go out and find a partner, So we've not had, if you look at non-Muslims, right, they've generally, boyfriend, girlfriend, all of that. They've lived together. They've done all of that, right? They've been on, and that's the social education that Muslims haven't had. So, I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I'm saying we shouldn't overly give ourselves a hard time. The fact that, in some of these areas we're, call it socially behind, if you will, So, the thing is, one role for us, let's say as a platform, is to try and educate, how to have these conversations, what to ask, what to be aware of, how to handle different situations. That's, for us, the gap that we're filling. So, yeah, sorry, that was quite a broad answer. I don't know how I ended up on this bit.
It was perfect. No, it was perfect because I think that you nailed something in that, like, we have a lot of taboos that we've we have to unlearn in our culture. I'm Iraqi, and I know in Iraqi culture, like, literally marriage is impossible. It's like all on the men. The women have to be demure and coy and like, oh, so sought after. And it's just like, it's just so ridiculous, Whereas things can just be much more efficient and effective. But that said, I love the 6 to 7 month data point, because anytime I have a friend who's like, I'm going to throw in the towel and go online, who's been resisting it, after a month, they were like, this sucks. Right. But it's like, yeah, it sucks in the real world too. Like dating just sucks, right? Like it always sucks. There's no way around it. And if it's just 6 or 7 months of kind of going through the options, you have to kind of focus on it. Like it's something you have to get past. But the book, I looked it up, by the way, it's called Dataclysm: Love, Sex, Race, and Identity, What Our Online Selves Tell Us About Our Offline Selves. And it came out in 2015 by the OkCupid guy. And it was just awesome because they went through all the data and found out, A, that like people suck. They're just way more racist and prejudiced than they want to admit they are based on the data and who selects who. But then there was also funny learnings. Like the most common phrases for women were my nails done, cute text, girls night, makeup. And men would write good bro, PS4 in 2015, the squad, hooping. But then there was that vocabulary that transcended race and gender, which was like pizza. That was the big word, right? So it was just it's a super interesting book. And the point the author is trying to make is like, we can learn a lot by who we select, and the data can tell us things that we don't want to admit about ourselves. And I think that we can learn some things within the Muslim community too. But I think this is just super, super cool. I know that I've kept you here for a really long time. So I have 2 questions.
Yeah, go for it.
I have a few questions before I get to your plugs. I guess the first is, what's the best story? Like, if you can think of a story that really keeps you going, what is it?
Specifically around muzmatch or just in general?
I would say probably around muzmatch. Like, we all have those friends who, when they find somebody, it's life changing. And I'm sure that I've hooked up like 4 people in my life, and I like hang my hat on it, though 2 are divorced, but whatever. But like, it was really a proud moment when it happened, right?
You're like, no refunds. No money back guarantee here.
So like, I'm sure there are these stories that just stick out, and you're like, whoa, like I did this.
Genuinely, it's the really obscure ones, right? And I've seen it, and it blows my mind. It's the people in a random village in the middle of nowhere who somehow, I don't know how, heard about muzmatch, used it, found a partner, and got married in the most remote area you think of. It genuinely blows my mind, and that, for me, it's the power of the internet. And I don't know, it's a miracle of how things can pan out. We've had stories from people in very remote areas in a random village in Pakistan. I remember when we hit our 1 million members. I remember because we wanted to give that person, I think, like gold membership for life. And I remember, so we found our millionth member when they signed up. And I remember we kind of zoomed into their location, right, of where they were. And they were in the most remote place. I think it was in Indonesia at the time. And it was the most remote place. And you're like, how the hell did they think, how did they hear about Muzmatch? It was crazy, right? But for me, that's genuinely amazing. I think the ability to, like you said, to impact people across the world is, and especially now through the power of the internet, it is mind blowing because it's possible now by almost anyone. It's not. I guess it's not something to be sniffed at. It's quite powerful what we can do. And I think genuinely, I was always amazed that look, it's almost at everyone's fingertips of being able to start a business, right? I set up Muzmatch, and I still remember that computer that I bought cost me £400. So I put it $550 or something like that, right? Not much. And I managed to build a business out of that thing, So our tools are now actually quite cheap, in all honesty. The cost of trying to set this stuff up has dropped so much. So now it's purely a matter of good idea. And I would actually say probably better than a good idea is just really good execution and really hard work. It's hard, right? Like I said, there's no overnight success for this. It's a daily grind. But I think for me, I guess, what I guess inspires me, it's kind of weird. For me, it's more what hasn't been done yet. So, Alhamdulillah, I think we've broken a lot of barriers for the Muslim market. Right? We were the first Muslim-centric startup ever to be backed by Y Combinator, which is a big deal, right? I want us to be the first kind of overtly Muslim-centric unicorn because it doesn't exist right now, and it's kind of a shame that it doesn't exist. We should totally have one. And for me, I'm convinced that Muzmatch can and should be that first one. And I genuinely hope there's other Muslims who come afterwards who do even bigger, better things than us. That's amazing. That's what we want. I spend a lot of my own time helping anyone out, anyone who reaches out to me with help on a pitch deck or on a business or whatever they're trying to do. I'm always like, right, 30 minutes, you've got of my time. I'll help you out as much as I can. And I genuinely try and do that because I never had that at all, right? And I want to make sure that after us and after Muzmatch or whatever, there's other people who just do bigger and better than us. I think that's so important. And especially in the Muslim space, we need more of it. It's kind of funny with your links of the Mipster stuff and the hipster shardy and all that, because it just clicked because I remember looking you up ages ago, and Hipster Shardy used to watch the website and see what was going on. And I always thought these guys are on it, and I was always like, I wonder why they're not bigger. I always remember thinking that, and I always was convinced there was something big coming. It never quite happened, but like you guys, for me, was someone I looked up to a lot. Out in the States. So yeah, I'm just bigging you up there, by the way.
It's really great to kind of reconnect after all that. Yeah, my brother and his friend just dropped it at some point. They were like still in college and never pushed it forward. But it's really great to reconnect. And I have to agree. I mean, I'm a Muslim in technology. I don't serve the Muslim space per se, but I am a Muslim woman. I do wear hijab. We've raised $23 million. And I cannot find a mentor for the life of me.
It's
like,
hard, right? Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, this has kind of been a funny theme throughout the podcast, but I'll like reach out to people on LinkedIn and they're just not biting, right? Like I don't look like any of them. I'll reach out to like our investors or people from like kind of my connections, and they just can't seem to place me somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's actually extraordinary because like you, I almost respond to every DM, every email. I'm always on random texts, random phone calls. People are always sending me things like this happened. I made this freaking podcast so people can elevate themselves in their careers, and so we can be respected as thought leaders, right? So it's wild, and I don't want anybody to face that. And I won't say it's necessarily prejudice, but like I also do something very hard. I've gotten to a particular place in my career, and there's a very specific skill set I want mentorship on, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I can find peers, but it's very hard to find mentors. But I do think that that is super important, and I do respect tremendously what you're doing. And before we get to the plugs, so people invest in you because they want liquidity events, right? Your investors were like, we're going to get to know you for 7 to 10 years, and you're going to go public or you're going to sell. Have you guys thought about that? Do you kind of like, what's next? What do you want to do with this?
It's a good question. So look, we've had acquisition offers from the big companies out there, and we said no. And why have we said no? Because for me, the mission is so not complete. My mission is to transform how Muslims meet and marry. Right, that's the heart of what we're trying to do. And what's good for us is, and I say this genuinely, with every day that passes, those tailwinds just get better for us. The taboo around finding someone is slowly decreasing. Smartphones are getting better. Internet's getting better. People's ability to pay are getting better. The cultural makeup of young people wanting to find their own partner, not just Muslims in non-Muslim countries, Muslims in Muslim countries, is changing, right? All these things where you're like, you realize with any business, and you realize, I guess, probably the older you get, that just right place, right time is so important, right? There's so many businesses out there that succeed, that fail, and you realize there's a massive percentage of any company's success or failure is just purely down to timing. I actually think that's statistically valid, right? There was I remember watching this TED talk where he studied X thousand companies that failed or succeeded or failed. And the biggest factor he could put it down to wasn't money, founders, all that kind of stuff. It was just timing. Literally was right place, right time. And so for me, I feel that the time for this is only getting better for us. We're in the right space. I think not in an arrogant way. I think we've got the best product, the best team. We work really hard. So for me, it's only just it's got more interesting. So, it's one of those things where you realize how, and on a personal level, I'm a very simple person. Alhamdulillah, I've worked hard. I've earned well in my career, but it's never done anything for me. Well, once you've bought a house, and my house is, I'd say, very, very ordinary, trust me. But once you've got it, I'm not a big spender. It bores me to tears doing shopping. I hate all that. It's just not my thing at all. I like building stuff and making stuff that I just always have, even from a young age. For me, that's what I guess excites me. So when you realize that actually money isn't the driver, it's almost that someone could dangle whatever they wanted in front of you in terms of money, and yes, it just wouldn't really do anything for you. And I know earlier I said, my goal, my vision is I want us to be the first Muslim-centric unicorn. It's not necessarily because it'll be worth $1 billion, right? It's less about the amount. It's more that that's a milestone that I feel we can get to, and more importantly, that someone in the Muslim world needs to get to. For a call it an overtly Muslim product. And for me, it's the mission. That matters way more than I guess anything else. And like I said, I'm so lucky that I do this for a living, right? I love business, tick. I love tech, tick. I love building stuff, tick. And we leave a great legacy in the world. We actually bring people together, and not in a cheesy way, but we do change people's lives, which massive tick, right? Like how lucky am I that I do that for a living? So alhamdulillah, I think about other stuff I could do, and I have ideas for so many different things, but we're so unfinished here. We've got so much to do, and I'm more excited now, and I'm not even just saying this kind of with fake chat. I'm genuinely more excited and more pumped now with all the stuff going on in my head and in our roadmap of what we can build and what we can do and where we could take this than I ever have been, which for me is just such a nice place to be. It really is. So, it's kind of a nice journey of going from a place when investors didn't want to come near you to now investors email you and people are, I guess, interested in your company. It's a great place to be. It comes with a ton of hard work. But for us, I always just say to the team, we just got to keep our head down, focus on the mission, and just smash it. Right? We've got such a long way to go. Maybe as a founder, you always have this view. And I was talking to the team. I still have the view we could die tomorrow. I still have it now. And people think I'm mad, but I don't know. I'll never shake it. I always think this whole thing could be over tomorrow. I don't know. We get hacked or God knows what, and it's all over. It's a real thing. And yeah, that scares me a little bit, but that's you just ride that, right? You keep going, and that's the only way I look at it. So, yeah, for me, I think the mission counts way more. It's more the getting there than what is actually there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I feel the same way. I love what I do. It's freaking hard. It's freaking awesome. It's freaking fun. So I feel you. Shahzad, this was such a pleasure. How can people follow your journey?
Yeah, just hopefully in the press. But no, muzmatch.com. Check out all our socials at muzmatch. Actually, it is at muzmatch everywhere. I'm on Twitter as well, and the muzmatch one as well. I'm not massively into social media. My team always tell me I need to be more into it. I need to find more time. Is a short answer, but generally follow us all. Download the app for free on the app stores. Inshallah, look, find a partner. I always say to everyone, especially if you're apprehensive about this kind of stuff, literally just give it a go. You know, everyone has. It's so strange. So many people give me so many different, I guess, recollections of their journey on muzmatch. Some people are like, oh, I used it and I only met kind of loser guys on there. And then literally I'll speak to someone else and said, oh my God, I really liked it. I met some amazing people, really good app. Thank you very much. And like, I can't, I'm always surprised at how sometimes, how kind of stark the difference is in people's feedback. But I would literally just say, look, just give it a go, because literally you never know. I still remember, actually, I'll tell you, I know the story. I remember there was a girl I was talking to, and I think she was doing some research about something, like genuinely, she wasn't just trying it. She was doing some research, and I said, all right, I can explain all this. But I said, look, you probably better if you actually just sign up and just put dummy information on there, and then you'll be able to do this research that you're trying to do. So she was like, great, I'll do that. And literally, she signed up just to do research. And then I remember she messaged me a few weeks later saying, oh, by the way, I actually met someone on your app. I was totally not expecting it. And now we're together and we're going to get married and all that. And I was like, wow.
Wait, you were talking to this girl? Like you were trying to marry?
No, not at all.
Oh, I thought you said you were talking to, which is like Muslim for dating.
No, not at all. No. I wouldn't do that. It was more that she'd approached us saying that she was trying to do this research about, I don't know what.
Got it. My version is way juicier, but we'll stick your version with your version for the
We'll go
record.
with that. Yours is for the after party.
I know that's a non-recorded podcast version.
But yeah, so literally, I would just say to people, look, give it a go, because you literally got nothing to lose, and you never know what can happen. And I always think, like with anything, it takes effort. You know, if you want to find someone and find the one, you got to put the effort in. It's not going to happen by accident. So that's my feedback.
Yeah, I would want to say that I always say about job searches, they're a matter of surface area. Luck is a direct response, like it's directly in response to surface area, right? Like opportunity happens when you kind of apply everywhere and learn how to perfect your craft of interviewing. But frankly, this is pretty similar. And I think that if folks go on with a closed mind, expecting it to suck and expecting, not willing to put the work in, it's not going to work. But you know what? It's also not going to work at a party. It's also not going to work at ISNA or wherever it is that you're trying to like find a match. It always requires that involvement. And though Shahzad didn't say it, I'll say it. Dating sucks. Talking sucks. Like it really sucks. It's the tough part. This is a tool to make it a little bit easier and a little bit better. And inshallah, you'll find your one.
Inshallah, you said it perfectly.
Awesome. Well, great chatting, Shahzad.
Andrew, thank you so much.
Thanks.